Millionaire disguises himself as a chauffeur to meet his rich fiancée's family, but his devastated wealth, power, and love, a combination that seems perfect, yet often hides secrets beneath its glossy surface. Ethan Caldwell had it all. A self-made millionaire, he built his empire from scratch, proving that determination and intelligence could turn dreams into reality. But despite all his success, one thing always made him uneasy: his fiancée's family. Victoria Lancaster was everything Ethan had ever wanted: beautiful, elegant, and ambitious. Coming from old money, she had grown up in luxury, where class and status meant everything. Though Victoria herself never judged Ethan for his humble beginnings, he often sensed an underlying tension whenever she mentioned her family. The Lancasters were not just rich, they were royalty in their circles, and Ethan, despite his wealth, was still seen as an outsider. I've noticed only 98% of you who watch haven't subscribed. Come on, guys, show some love and support. Thanks a bunch to those who have already subscribed. One evening, as they sat in Ethan's penthouse overlooking the city skyline, Victoria hesitated before speaking. My parents, they think you're impressive, but they also believe money can't buy class, she admitted softly. Ethan smirked. So they're the type who believe you have to be born into wealth to truly belong? She sighed. I just don't want them to judge you before they get to know you. That's when Ethan had an idea, a test, a challenge. He wanted to see their true nature, to understand what kind of family he was marrying into. And so he devised a plan. Instead of arriving at the Lancaster estate as Victoria's fiancé, he would go as something else, their chauffeur. The plan was simple. Victoria would introduce him as Oliver, a new driver for the weekend. Ethan had the resources to make this deception flawless. With a rented luxury car and a perfectly tailored uniform, he transformed himself into a humble employee. When he pulled up to the Grand Lancaster mansion, his heart pounded. He had seen wealth, but this was different. The estate sprawled across acres with fountains, marble staircases, and servants who operated like clockwork. The first to greet him was Mr. William Lancaster, Victoria's father. Tall, with silver hair and an air of superiority, he barely spared Ethan a glance. Mrs. Eleanor Lancaster, on the other hand, inspected him with sharp eyes, as though evaluating his worth. You'll be driving for us this weekend? She asked curtly. Yes, ma'am, Ethan responded humbly. He quickly learned that in this world, employees were invisible. The family spoke openly in front of him, treating him like furniture. That's when the real truth began to unfold. At dinner, as he stood in the background, he overheard the Lancasters discussing their daughter's engagement. I don't trust self-made men, Mr. Lancaster declared, slicing through his steak with precision. They lack the refinement of old money. This Ethan fellow, he may have wealth, but does he understand legacy? Ethan's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. That's what worries me, Mrs. Lancaster chimed in. Money earned is money that can be lost. I fear for Victoria's future. Ethan had expected skepticism, but what truly stung was when Victoria's brother Nathaniel laughed. Let's be real, he scoffed. Victoria's just playing around. She'll come to her senses. A man like that will never fit in with us. Ethan's grip on the steering wheel tightened later that night as he drove Mr. Lancaster to a social event. The man spoke to him without realizing who he was, boasting about the importance of family name and legacy, and how some people were simply not meant to belong in their world. Over the next 2 days, Ethan witnessed things that unsettled him. The casual cruelty of the elite, the dismissive way they treated their staff, and worst of all, the subtle hints that Victoria herself had absorbed some of these beliefs. He saw her hesitate when her parents questioned her about Ethan, saw the slight embarrassment in her eyes when she spoke of his past, and then came the moment that shattered him completely. During an afternoon tea gathering with their high society friends, one of the women turned to Victoria. Darling, we heard about your engagement, but tell us, do you really believe this entrepreneur of yours can handle our world? Victoria laughed softly. I mean, love is about compromise, isn't it? She didn't defend him. She didn't challenge them. She merely smiled as if agreeing that he was indeed an outsider, an inconvenience she would have to tolerate. That night, Ethan made his decision. The next morning, he arrived at the estate, no longer dressed as a chauffeur, but as himself, a billionaire who had built his own destiny. He walked through the grand hall with purpose, where the family, still seated at breakfast, looked up in shock. Mr. Lancaster set down his cup of coffee, eyes narrowing. "What is the meaning of this?" Ethan's voice was calm but firm. "The meaning, Mr. Lancaster, is that I needed to see the truth for myself, and now I have." He turned to Victoria, his heart aching. "I thought you saw me for who I was, not just for what I have. But when given the chance to stand up for me, you stayed silent." Her eyes filled with panic. "I didn't mean—" "But you did," he interrupted, and that silence spoke louder than words. He faced her family. "You think legacy is everything, but I built mine with my own hands without needing a name to carry me. And yet, to you, that makes me lesser." There was a moment of heavy silence before Ethan turned away. He had seen enough. The wealth, the prestige. It all meant nothing without integrity, without love that stood unshaken by status. As he walked out, Victoria called after him, but he didn't turn back. He had his answer. And sometimes knowing the truth was the most painful lesson of all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. What would you do in Ethan's situation? Let's discuss in the comments. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories to life. So hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more.